This week on the Hollywood in Toto podcast, we find out why Cheryl Hines' career could be curbed for the craziest reason possible. We talk to screen legend Jon Voight about his new movie, Reagan. Yeah, the big movie's finally here, and we can't wait to talk to Jon about his role in the film and other thoughts related to the project. And want to wrap things up with a golden age of sorts for right-leaning art, and our response will be fascinating.
Welcome to the Hollywood in Toto podcast. Entertainment news and reviews without the woke Hollywood narrative. Free speech, free expression. Now that's entertainment. And here's your host, award-winning film critic, Christian Toto.
Before the show officially starts, I hope you'll subscribe to the Hollywood in Toto podcast. You can find us now on YouTube, Rumble, iTunes, most audio platforms that have your favorite podcasts. Give us a like, a subscribe, a share. Just tell a friend about it. Go old school. We appreciate it. Well, Cheryl Hines is in trouble, and she didn't actually do anything wrong. Not surprising in Hollywood. Sometimes you get canceled for the wrong reasons or no reasons. In the case of Cheryl Hines, the actress from Curb Your Enthusiasm, her fault was giving love and support to her husband, who just so happens to be Robert F. Kennedy Jr. When RFK Jr. decided to support Donald Trump, that's when all heck broke loose in Hollywood, specifically regarding Cheryl Hines. Now, Cheryl is not a conservative. She doesn't like Donald Trump. Clearly, she loves her husband and she's giving him her support because that's what a spouse does. But now the Hollywood Reporter is worried about her. It says that the next time she goes to a Hollywood event, a cocktail party, maybe she's just on the set of a TV show, things could get awkward based on her husband's support of the evil, wicked Donald Trump. Or, the Hollywood Reporter warns, she could be shunned in her own community, in her own industry where she's worked for decades. Now, Cheryl Hines is 58. She's a woman. And you know, when you get older in Hollywood as a woman, it gets harder. A lot of preconceived notions in Hollywood, a lot of ageism in Hollywood. You must stay beautiful forever, otherwise the roles dry up. And now, because she has the wrong opinions, or rather her husband has the wrong opinions, she could be punished. And what's so fascinating to me about stories like this is that they're reported in the mainstream press. It gets a lot of ink, or I guess you could say ones and zeros in our digital age. And there's no one ever connecting the dots. Well, what does that mean? She did nothing wrong. She threw her support behind her husband. Now, Cheryl Hines has been pretty anti-Trump over the years. She seems like a pretty reliably liberal voice in Hollywood, not overtly political, but whenever she does speak on the issues, it's left of center for sure. But that's not enough. Her husband has committed the thought crime, and by connecting to him, by supporting him, by not denouncing her own husband, she could be shunned. I mean, this is just part of the bigger picture that's going on in Hollywood. And I talk about it a lot because, God, it's important. It really is. Listen, I know it's concentrated in Hollywood, but it's happening all around us. I lost my best friend because we had different political views. I think many people out there watching this right now or listening have had something very similar happen to them. And now in Hollywood, if you're right of center, if you even favor Trump to a degree, or you just be happy to marry to someone who favors Trump to a degree, there could be consequences. It's a stunning turn of events. There's no sort of self-awareness happening here. There's no one in Hollywood who's reporting on this saying, hey, wait a minute. Don't we support women? Don't we want people to speak out and have their own points of view? Doesn't that matter? Why should Cheryl Hines be punished or maybe lose work perhaps for something her husband did? And what if she did throw on a red MAGA hat and say, you know what? I've seen the light. I kind of like this Trump guy, warts and all. Oh my gosh, imagine the uproar. Well, why couldn't she say that? She might even change her mind. Just a quick preview of next week's show. I just spoke to Scott Baio, who's in the new movie God's Not Dead and God We Trust. And one of the things he told me is after all this Cheryl Hines situation goes down, he wouldn't be surprised if she comes out as right of center. Maybe this is a transformative moment. She gets red-pilled because she's going to be treated pretty horribly in the weeks and months to come. And her only recourse, really, at least within the industry, is to break up with her husband or denounce him or denounce his support of Donald Trump. It's certainly possible. I don't think she'll do it at this point. It sounds like she loves her husband, trying to do the best by him. But what does it matter if one actress in Hollywood decides to support a man who happens to support Donald Trump? Is that where we've become? Is that how far we've fallen? And where are the feminists out there? Why shouldn't they be rallying around Cheryl Hines? How dare they attack her? She can have her opinions. Why don't just let her alone? Let her speak. But the Hollywood feminists, well, they're good at being silent. You can ask Gina Carano about that. She didn't do anything wrong either. She's a very nice person. I've interviewed her. Real salt of the earth type. But her crime was being not even right of center, but a little bit of an iconoclast. She just didn't follow the sheep, didn't follow the narrative. And then, of course, Disney Plus fired her from The Mandalorian. I mean, absolutely unfair, and it's literally in court right now. She's suing Disney about that situation. Where were the feminists to back her up? Hey, I'm a good feminist, and I don't agree with her points of view, but boy, Gina Carano should be able to say it. Didn't happen. Will never happen. And you're not going to see it with Cheryl Hines either. So I wish the best for Cheryl Hines. She's a talented actress. She's clearly standing by her man. Her maybe kind of complicated behind the scenes. I imagine there have been some conversations that may have been less than ideal. I know I'm in a mixed marriage. My wife is a liberal and I'm a conservative. We've had some of those moments, so it's certainly not as intense as what I think Cheryl Hines and RFK Jr. are doing right now behind the scenes as far as the situation goes. But let her speak. Let her have her opinion. Let her support her husband. And let's stop this nonsense, this guilt by association. It is disgusting. It's uncalled for. And oh so tolerant Hollywood, could you live up to the name? Please, we'd appreciate it. Coming up next, Jon Voight. How cool is it to say that? Listen, this show gets a variety of guests. Some are very famous, some are less famous, and I think they're all certainly worthwhile and their opinions are valid, and I'd love to hear everything they have to say. At the same time, when you have a screen legend like Jon Voight, you feel a little bit different about the situation. Now, we don't have Jon Voight for very long in this conversation, but any chance to talk to a screen legend, you take it. And of course, what a better time than to talk about Reagan.
I am about to start the biggest war of this century, and I'm not going to fire a single shot.
He's a co-star in the film. It's coming out August 30th, starring, of course, Dennis Quaid as the 40th president. And Jon Voight plays a KGB agent. I believe it's a composite character who's been studying Reagan through the years and basically serves as a framing device for the movie. It's a pretty fascinating approach, and I'll talk about the movie more in subsequent episodes. But got a chance to talk to the man himself, Jon Voight, about communism, about what the heart and soul of Reagan truly is, the movie at least, certainly the man as well, and a bit more. Again, Reagan stars Dennis Quaid, Jon Voight, Nick Searcy, Kevin Sorbo, and many, many more famous faces, coming August 30th. I hope everyone does check it out. And if you're a right of center audience member and you're listening and you think, why don't they make movies like this? Why don't they make movies that speak to me and my values and the things that I care about deeply? Well, they just did. It's out, coming soon. So check it out. And if you don't check it out, at least not en masse, you may not see many more films like this. We'll get to more of that after the conversation. But for now, Jon Voight, Reagan the movie. Hope you enjoy. Jon, thanks for joining us. This is Christian Toto from HollywoodInToto.com. This isn't just a biopic we're talking about. This is really a full-on attack on communism in a way. I didn't know that would be so full frontal here. Can you talk about that and how that was so critical to the story and obviously critical to Reagan's legacy?
Well, I look at the movie and I think of that it's a very moving picture. It takes you on a ride and it's really so beautifully filled with Dennis Quaid's interpretation of Reagan and Penelope Ann Miller's Nancy. It's a love story in many ways and very moving. The idea of him combating communism, that certainly is the story of Ronald Reagan's 2 terms in the presidency. And he was following the communist movements from the time he was a young man. And so he was the perfect fellow to fill those shoes at that time. And that he was successful. And people followed him.
Mhm.
The KGB followed him, and they had a report on him. They say, this guy means what he says and says what he means. So they were scared of him. They say, oh, well, if he says something, we're in trouble. You know, if he's saying these things, we're in trouble. Whatever it was, it was a very interesting journey that he took. And it was because of some of the other people involved, like Margaret Thatcher, the Pope, John Paul II, and certainly Gorbachev.
Now, you spent some time over the years in Russia. Did that flavor your character, give you a better grounding to play this particular figure?
I think probably it did. It gave me a little bit of bravery to take it on. This character that I play is like 5 years older than I am, or maybe 10 years older than I am. And it required a little bit of makeup. And then I have to play 35 years younger than I am in the same movie. So really, the makeup is a big part of it. Was I able to do it? And I think that's something that people will go and judge. But yes, this understanding of the communists and how they viewed things and what their intentions were. I did a lot of research on that, and we're still, and perhaps we're dealing more than ever with the results of the incursion of that spirit, that communist breaking down of our society, that plan to break down our society. They've been pretty successful in many ways.
You've entered the project with lots of, you lived through the Reagan years. I'm sure you had a lot of thoughts about him as a leader. But then when you make the movie, when you're immersed in this project, how do you come away from this? Did you have a different understanding, a different appreciation, a new way of thinking about Reagan and his legacy?
Well, I see, I know a lot of people, and there are a lot of people today who are prominent people in the conservative world that worked with Reagan. And you can see the spirit of Reagan from the way they talked about him and the energy with which they pursue their own careers. There are really a lot of great people out there who were given an opportunity to work in politics under Ronald Reagan, and they're making a difference now. There are perhaps our wisest commentators on certain aspects of what's going on.
Yeah.
In terms of, especially in terms of this communist preparation that went on in the 50s and 60s to take down this country. It's come to some fruit as we see around, as we look around us now. There's a lot to be said about this. I don't want to get too much into it.
No, I understand.
The story of Reagan is the story of Reagan.
One super quick last question. What do you want audiences to take away from the film?
Well, I think they're going to have a wonderful journey in the love relationship between Nancy and Ronnie. And they'll be learning, they'll be going through some of the things that they've seen, and they'll see the key moments and how they happened. And it's a good story, a very good story. And they're certainly going to be delighted with the performances of Ronald Reagan and Nancy.
Great. Thank you very much, Jon. A pleasure to speak to you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Take care. Well, I think if you're conservative and frustrated by Hollywood, there's a bit of an interesting moment coming in the weeks ahead. Of course, you've got Reagan out August 30th. You've got Am I Racist, the new Daily Wire Plus movie. That's in theaters September 13th, certainly appealing directly to red state America. It's a film that debunks DEI as only Matt Walsh can do it. I've called him on my website, hollywoodandtoto.com, the new Borat, and I think there's some truth to that. It's a worthy conversation to have as far as him debunking narratives in the press, going undercover, you name it. It's just going to be a fascinating movie. There's also another film coming soon that I can't say more about, but it's going to be right in that red state America wheelhouse. Plus, next week we're talking to Scott Baio. His new movie is God's Not Dead, In God We Trust. That's in select theaters September 12th. All these movies in theaters, right directly aimed at the heartland. Do conservatives stop complaining? We're getting some product. The Daily Wire's cranking out material both in theaters and on its subscription service. The Blaze has some original content as well. More and more independent documentary filmmakers are filling the void left behind by the rest of their documentary field. It's a golden age of sort in a way because there hasn't even been as much as a bronze age or an aluminum age, that for that matter. Conservatives have had a very tough time in the marketplace, have had a very tough time in Hollywood, getting their feet wet, getting a purchase on the industry, putting their stories, their names, their talent out there. And now it's happening. And now the rest is really up to us, you and me. Are we going to see these projects? Are we going to rally our friends to the theater? Or are we going to say, I'll probably watch it on streaming in a couple of weeks or a couple of months? Is that the plan? Because if that is the plan, then you're not going to see these movies in theaters much longer. It's going to send a signal that there isn't an audience for this kind of product, that all the bluster and all the complaints that conservatives have had about Hollywood, well, maybe it was overblown, or maybe, it's just hot air. You have to take action. We're living in a time where action is essential. When I was growing up, action really wasn't essential. We put our kids to bed. We put in a 8 and 9 hour day of work. We did what we could. We lived our lives. And the America that we loved was there to back us up. It was pretty simple. It's not simple anymore. Censorship is on the rise. Free speech is under attack. People are being arrested in some cases and kid gloves in another. The America that we lived in 10, 20 years ago, it's fading. And we can't be sitting on the sidelines. Now, there are many, many things you can do. You can work for your local politician. You could vote. You can register. You can crowdfund. You could help write a check for a particular organization or a politician. That's all great. I don't cover that stuff. I cover Hollywood. And what we can do in Hollywood, in this community, in this region, in this conversation, is support right-leaning art, because these conservative artists need our support, because they've been heckled in Hollywood. They've been canceled in Hollywood. Just think about God's Not Dead, the new film. Who's in it? Scott Baio. Do you think that Hollywood's going to hire him anymore? He's an openly conservative actor. Not a chance, right? Just the way it goes. Who else is in the movie? Dean Cain, another actor who's basically on the sidelines now after years and years of being within the Hollywood ecosystem. His thought crime? He's a conservative. It's just unbelievable. It's where we are right now. It's these parallel economies going back and forth. And when it comes to Hollywood, at least there is a parallel economy. At least there is a path for a Dean Cain, a Scott Baio, to keep working, to tell their stories. That matters. But if we don't listen to the stories, if we don't support their stories, even if they're imperfect, even if there's some flaws here, they're not going to keep going. They'll shrink. The opportunities will dry up. And the people behind the scenes who do have some cash, who have been so reticent to fund these projects, they will disappear, up in smoke, gone. I've talked to so many people, including Kevin Sorbo, about how hard it is for him to get money for his projects. But if Michael Moore came out tomorrow and said, I've got a new movie I'm really curious to fund, people would run toward him with their checkbook in hand, or whatever however they do it, their Venmo password in hand. Let's just bring it up to the 21st century. It's not the way it is in conservative circles. So in the coming weeks, we've got Reagan. We've got God's Not Dead and God We Trust. We've got Am I Racist? We've got a fourth movie I can't say more about, but trust me, it's coming very soon. If we don't rally, if we don't draw a crowd at these particular streaming events or theatrical events, you're going to see less of them. And that's on us. We can all rush out. We can all see Inside Out 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine. Those are good movies. They deserve support. I have no problem with that. But if we don't also go out and fill the theaters for these right-leaning films, we're just going to get less and less of them. Let's make sure that doesn't happen. Well, that's it for the show this week. Thank you again to Radio America for having me as part of their great podcast lineup. And of course, please check out HollywoodInToto.com. It is the site's 10-year anniversary. No cards, no letters, just a click or two on the site is all I ask. Again, it's just like the show. It is the right take in entertainment. And I update it 7 days a week. And I never rest. The site never rests. And I hope you'll check it out now and then. Not as aggressively as I do, but I do appreciate the attention. I appreciate the feedback. Let me know what you think. If you like what you see on HollywoodInToto.com or this podcast, something's missing, something's amiss, well, you can always write me. Christian@hollywoodintoto.com. Easy enough. And by the way, a quick shout out to my new mug, Toto with a little dog here, as a gift from a friend. I love it. It was very thoughtful of her, and hope you enjoy the reference, because when you're born with the name Toto, it's a burden and it's also a blessing. But as I get older, it's more of a blessing than anything else. I've embraced the name, and the fact that you're watching or listening means you have too, to a tiny degree, without all the name calling and all the silliness that comes with it. So thank you again, and I will talk to everyone next week.